We're going to go ahead and get started. Maybe that's not a very good start. There may be a few stragglers coming in. Do we need to shut this door?
We do.
Noisy. Yeah. I feel like I'm shouting. I can't hear myself. First announcement is we have a litter of bottle feeders that need to go to a foster home tomorrow. They're at Dr. Agostini's tonight, and it sounds like I'm going to need a home for them tomorrow. So when we get to bottle feeding tonight, if that piques your interest, let me know, because if you've got any experience with kittens at all, I can show you how to bottle feed. That's not a problem. Okay? Okay, so tonight's agenda, we're going to start with a PowerPoint presentation on fostering, general fostering. And if you have questions, feel free to ask them during the presentation. And if it's something that I know we're going to cover later, I'll just tell you that. Otherwise, I will go ahead and try to answer the question then. And you people who are experienced in fostering, if you hear me say something wrong, correct me, or if I forget something, be sure and just feel free to pipe right up, okay? And then after we're done with that, Paula is going to do, yours is PowerPoint also, right? A short presentation on how, not necessarily how, but some of the things you need to be aware of and some of the techniques to use when you are fostering semi-feral kittens. And some of those techniques can also apply to cat volunteers who are at the shelter working with semi-feral kittens once they arrive there. So I know that's why some of you guys are here for that too. So thank you all for coming. And let's go ahead and get started. Tonight's goals is to just basically give you a general view of the cat foster care program at the shelter, so that if you do get involved in fostering, you'll have kind of the big picture as well as the small picture, which I know most of you get kind of bogged down in at times, but if you get kind of the big overall picture, it'll help answer some of those questions that you have about, well, why do I have to do this or that? So that's one of the goals. Another goal is to inform you of the different types of fostering that we have a need for our cats. And another one is just to give you more of the details, the micro kind of information on what you can expect when fostering. So basically fostering is just providing a temporary home, and that could be one day and one night. It could be 6 months, it could be a year, right? It could be more than that. You just never, well, usually we do have a good idea. With the kittens, we have a good idea of what it's going to be. But with some of the other kind of fosters that we have a need for, we don't always know for sure. For example, a hospice foster, we don't know how, we just know they're going to stay there until they're ready to leave, and so that's always kind of a guessing game. But basically, it's a temporary home, and the cats are still considered the property of the San Clemente Dam Point Animal Shelter, rather than your own. Why foster? Well, first of all, because you're saving a life, and that's the most important one of any of the reasons to foster. It's But one of the main reasons that the San Clemente Dam Point Animal Shelter is able to be a pro-humane shelter, because we are able to take kittens and or sick or injured animals and place them in foster, where at other shelters, those same kinds of animals probably would end up being euthanized. And so our foster program is very, very important in helping us to fulfill our mission of being a pro-humane shelter and saving all of the animals that we can possibly save. Other reasons to foster: some kittens come into the shelter and they're too young. Our shelter is not staffed 24 hours a day, and they need 24/7 care. Perhaps they're bottle feeders. They need to be fed every 2 to 3 hours around the clock. They can't wait from 5 o'clock in the afternoon to 8 o'clock the next morning. So it's for kittens that are too young to be left by themselves for that long of a period of time. Another reason to foster is we get pregnant cats in. And the shelter is not a good environment for pregnant cats to prepare emotionally and physically for giving birth to kittens. They need to go into a quiet, safe, calm home where they can get settled in, and then when it's time for the birth of their babies, it's not a big traumatic event for them having to do it at a shelter, and there are people there with them to assist them if they need help, which they usually don't. It also, fostering helps reduce exposure to any of the contagious diseases that go around at the shelter. There are certain cat diseases that can be quite contagious, like an upper respiratory infection. And kittens are very vulnerable to catching those kinds of things and get a lot sicker when they do than when adult cats do. And so we like to keep them out of the shelter while they're young so that there's a much less chance of them catching those kinds of diseases. And then finally, a reason to foster is to provide socialization for the cats. Not all of our cats that come in as adults are considered, you know, real outgoing or friendly, and what ends up is they're not considered real adoptable in the end. And so we like to put them into foster care and help them get socialized in a home, get used to the sounds and the smells and people and being held and that sort of thing for a short period of time, and then when they come back to the shelter, they're much more adoptable than what they were previously. We also do that with semi-feral kittens. That's the main reason one of the main reasons we have to provide foster for them, and that's one of the things that Paula will be talking about. Okay, the first steps to becoming a foster parent or family are what you're doing right now. You're here, and you're going through the training, and at the end you will be given an application. An application is a thing that we advise you to fill out even though you really don't have any intention of fostering, only because about mid to late July we're out of foster homes, and sometimes I just need somebody for one night. And I know that some of you who say, oh, I can't foster, would probably be willing to take a kitten for one night, and you're going to do a much better job of it because you've been to the foster training here than somebody who just goes into it cold. So we'd like to have you fill it out. You can let me know. You can write across it. I'm only here to learn about semi-ferals and how to socialize them. I don't care. I'm going to put it in my file anyway. But you can always say no. You can always say no. You're not committed in any way to having to take kittens or cats. Okay? But if you are interested in it, it's good to think ahead of time before you get a call about fostering, about what area in your home you would want to keep your fosters in. And then you work on kitten and cat proofing that area, which means things like getting rid of any valuable things that might be in the room, making sure wires are put up so that they cannot chew on them and things like that. And you will get a complete handout of what it means to kitten or cat proof the room you keep your fosters in, and a lot of other information as well. So I'm not going to go over all what that means tonight, but just you would need to start thinking about it a bit. And then you watch for the emails and the phone calls, usually from me, requesting a foster home. And then basically, if you've been trained and it's in an area, say you want 6 to 8 week old kittens that you are comfortable with, then if you're the first one to call, then you get those kittens. And I'll explain them what happens after that in a little bit here. So, which is the next sheet, the fostering process. When the mom cats or the kittens first come into the shelter staff evaluate them. And they may come from being abandoned outside the shelter in a box. They may have been just picked up somewhere and are thought to be strays. But however they end up coming there, the shelter staff evaluate them first before they go out into foster, or before we try to find a foster. They, if they see anything that might indicate there's a medical issue at all, they will have a vet look at the cat or the kittens first. But generally, the ones that come in are pretty healthy and they're just too young, or for whatever reason they need to go into foster. So they call me, the shelter staff do, and they give me all the information on the cat. Then what I do, usually 90% of the time what I do is I send an email out to everybody who is on the foster parent list. And I get your emails off of the application that you fill out. And I give all the information that I know about the cats or the kittens, their personality, their health, what they look like, where they came from, if they seem to be shy or scared or aggressive, if we can tell if they get along with other animals like dogs or cats. All of those things I will try to include in the email. And I will also let you know how long we're thinking that the foster will be needed for. And then, like I said, whoever responds to it first and looks good and sounds good, then they're going to get them. And then I arrange with you on the phone about going up to the shelter and picking them up. When you go up there to pick them up at the shelter, you will be given some paperwork to fill out saying that you understand that it's a foster. Then you will be given contact information, which is a sheet of paper that has a phone number of the shelter, animal shelter supervisor, both the week and weekend animal shelter supervisor, and my phone numbers on it. And those are numbers that you are able to call 24/7. You will be given a vaccination schedule to let you know if they're kittens, when they need to come in to get their vaccinations. And a lot of times you will be given a date right off the bat at that time too, and saying, okay, you come in on this date to get the vaccinations, and you will just bring them. Generally, you will just need to bring them to the shelter for their vaccinations. Vaccinations usually happen twice a week. I believe they're going to change the days this year, so I can't really tell you what days they are, but you've got 2 different days that you can choose from. You will get a copy, if there is one, of their medical file. If they don't really have a medical file, they do have a file that has their name, and it has a shelter impound number on it, and along with the foster release that you've signed to put in it. And so if you ever have an emergency, you will grab that and take it with you to the vet, or like this place, Urgent Care, and hand that to them, and they will know that it's a San Clemente Dana Point animal, and that is who is responsible for making the decisions about the treatment and also for paying for the treatment. So it's really important you keep track of that. I know some foster parents lose those right off the bat, and then they end up after hours at a clinic and they're trying to convince the people there, it's not really my cat, it's a shelter's. And it works out, but it makes life a lot easier if you keep track of that file. And you will be given all supplies, food, bedding, litter boxes, toys if they're kittens, and they're going to need to be weighed so we know when they need their vaccinations, and when they are ready to be spayed or neutered. You will get a scale. Am I forgetting anything? Towels, just whatever you need. Baby food if they're little ones, or formula, bottles if you're going to need a bottle to feed them. Basically everything that you need to take care of the cats or the kittens are provided for you. Pet Project Foundation, which is the organization that supports financially and through their volunteers the San Clemente Dana Point Animal Shelter, funds all of the foster care program as far as providing all of the supplies and everything like that, the medical treatment and everything. So that's actually who is providing it for you, but you get it at the shelter. Okay? Okay, the age of the kittens. One of the things that they look at when kittens or cats appear at the door or over the counter is if it appears to be 0 to 4 weeks old, it will need to be bottle fed. And so we look for a foster parent who's interested in bottle feeding. If they're over 4 weeks old, they are usually able to eat on their own. They may need a little encouragement and may need to be shown how, but they usually do not need to be bottle fed and they can eat on their own. Like I said, if there's a health issue, if it looks like there's one, then a vet is called and they see a vet before they go into foster. Sometimes cats come in and they're chubby and we don't know for sure if they're pregnant or if they're just chubby. And so sometimes we have to wait a while to figure that out. As soon as we know that they're pregnant, then we're looking for a foster home who will take a pregnant mom cat and let the cat stay there until she has the babies and then take care of the babies afterwards for about 6 to 7 weeks. And also, they will, like I said, assess the personality. They want people who are comfortable with the little hissy Spitfire ones to take those, and ones who know how to work with the scared, shy ones to take those, and so on and so forth. So we try to do a good match. Sometimes we have no choice. We just have to go with whoever's available. And it usually works out. Yeah, a warm body. Right. Okay, and there are a number of different types of fostering opportunities. The orphan kittens are the first. These are the ones that we need a foster home for tomorrow. I think there's 4. And these are the newborns. They are probably the ones that we have at Dr. Agostini's tonight. They're probably about 3.5 weeks old, so they're close to being able to eat on their own. And these are the most fragile of all the fosters that you can do. They need 24/7 care, which can mean bottle feeding every 2 to 3 hours, depending on the age and size of the kittens. And that, it takes a special kind of person to do that. I've only done it a couple times. After 2 days, I'm exhausted. It's like, I can't do this anymore. But some people, that's all they do all summer. And it's amazing that they're so good at it. So anyway, that's one type of fostering. Then we've got the orphan kittens who are 4 to 6 weeks old. They're eating on their own, and they're exploring the world around them. They've figured out that litter box and how to use it, and they're starting to get a little more confident and just want to check things out, and they're getting really cute, really cute. Then we got the 6 weeks and above, and those guys, you know, are killers as far as squeezing into your heart. They are all they need, not all they need in foster. They need to be, you know, obviously fed. Area needs to be kept clean and all of that. But they mainly need socializing, which means they need to be held a lot. They need to be around the blender sound and the TV and people coming in and out of the house, so that when they come back to the shelter, they're not fazed by the noise there, hopefully, and they will show really well so that they get adopted and can adjust into a new home because they've been there and been there, done that, you know, so they're used to it. And then we've got the semi-feral kittens. These are the ones actually that we're usually lacking foster homes for because they're more difficult, and we tend to get more of them because Paula is so good at catching them. Paula heads up this trap neuter release program, right? And so a lot of times she will trap mama cats and their babies, and or trap a feral mama cat, and we will manage to get the cat in foster care and until the babies are born, and then sometimes we leave them, sometimes we separate them fairly soon, don't we? Yeah. So anyway, these are the ones I am most desperate to help, to try to find homes for. So that's why, one of the reasons why Paula is going to touch on that subject tonight. as well. And we've got a lot of information on, in writing, and we've got videos on how to work with semi-feral kittens. And in the end, they seem to be actually the most rewarding of any of the fosters that you get, usually. Okay, and then we've got pregnant cats and moms with kittens. You need a private spot for mom cat, and mom stays with you until the kittens are born, or until the kittens are weaned at about 6 weeks, and then at that time, she goes back to the shelter to dry out, and she is spayed at that time, and the kittens stay with you for a couple more weeks, and that's when you work on really socializing them. And you have to wait until they get a little bit bigger to get spayed and neutered before they can come back to the shelter. Okay, and then we've got special needs fostering. This is the other area that we really are desperate at times for foster homes for. These are cats who are recovering from an illness or surgery. They are cats with behavioral problems. They just cannot handle the shelter for whatever reason. They are either just really shy and scared, or they're aggressive and they lash out, and so we need to put them into foster homes. And then we've got cats who are failing to thrive in the shelter environment. We haven't really had any of those recently that I can think of. The last one I think we had was Dallas, right? Yeah, which is like 5 years ago. So, and then we've got hospice foster, which is a whole other ballgame when it comes to fostering, because you're going to keep them until the end of their lives, and so you're their last home, you're their last person. They may be a cat who needs special food or to be medicated daily, and maybe a cat who needs subcutaneous fluids because of kidney issues. For me, these are the ones I like to do the best. I think they're the absolutely most rewarding thing you can do. And it's really, really hard to find people who are willing to do this, because you kind of go into it knowing if you get attached, you're going to have your heart broken eventually. And so we have very few people who are willing to do this. And we have a cat right now who is in need of this, so I'll just put that out there. Okay? Okay, so things to remember when you're fostering. If in doubt, even if you think it's a stupid, silly question, call the shelter during business hours, or call the foster coordinator, which is me, or one of the staff members, and you will have their after-hour phone numbers on that contact sheet as well. So I always say it's better to call than to not call. So it doesn't matter, day or night, call one of us. And if you can't get the first person you call, just keep calling and leave messages every time you call, because we're not ever very far from our phones or listening, checking to see if we've got messages. Another thing to remember, sadly, is not all kittens survive. There are some kittens who just, maybe they're the runt of the bunch, maybe there is something physically wrong with them, and mom knows that, and so she's not taking care of them. It's just kind of an animal instinct to keep that one outside of the litter bin. But it's not unusual for a foster parent to come in the morning and a kitten who was perfectly fine the night before is horribly sick the next morning, or has passed away sometime in the night. And you just need to always keep that in mind, and also remember it's just part of what happens, and it's not your fault.
Do we call?
When that happens, you call either me or the shelter staff. Right. And the other thing, like I said before, is fostering saves lives. Okay, I think I've already gone over what we provide. Vet services, I forgot to tell you that one. Yeah, I guess I did mention that. All kinds of support if you got any questions, or if you're just having trouble. I have foster parents who will call me and they'll say, you know, this darn cat, I can't get it to stop jumping up and grabbing food off my plate. I'm serious. And so it's like they don't really know how to train a cat not to do that. And this is a real one that's happened a couple times. And so I give them some tips, and if that doesn't work, then I will go out to their house and show them what they need to do when they're eating dinner. Show them what kind of limits you need to set. There was a foster family last summer, and they ended up being great foster parents. But they got like a 5-week-old kitten who was underage, all by herself, and they took her home, and they just gave her the run of the house. And you don't do that with a little kitten like this. Luckily, this kitten was just like so confident and spunky that did not faze her a bit. But she ended up being a huge discipline problem. She owned them. She had them wrapped around her little finger. And it was just like a nightmare trying to get her to learn any kind of manners at all. And sometimes it's hard when you only have one, because they don't have another kitten with them to teach them that, ouch, you're biting too hard, because mom will teach them that, or another kitten. But if they're a loner, then it's up to the humans to teach them that. And these humans were not doing that. Oh, she's so cute. And then the next minute they call me and go, she's a demon. I'm serious. We have no control. She's a wildcat. And I go there, and they have scratches all up and down their arms, and they were older. And so they were really bleeding bad. Another thing, too, is we encourage you to start them young on getting their nails trimmed. And that's another thing that if you just can't do, then it's somebody like me or maybe somebody else experienced in doing that. We'll send over to your house to teach you how to do it and do it for you maybe the first couple of times. Yeah.
Speaking of that, how young can a kitten start to be bathed to get them adjusted to water and baths? Not that you would do that on a normal, but under conditions of contamination, things you want to be able to bathe the cat without them freaking out. So how old do they need to be for something like that?
Hi.
Hi, sorry we're late.
That's okay. It's okay. I don't think if there's any particular age. I mean, it's not good to bathe them when they're young, that they can't regulate their temperature, their own body temperature. But sometimes a kitten is so covered in fleas that it's almost the only thing you can do to say, you got to do that to save their life. Literally, it's that, freak them out, make them cold, at the time. But you got to get the fleas off of them. So I can't really say for sure.
Okay.
But it's a good question. Yeah.
Well, and I know we've gotten them into the shelter where we've had to bathe them because
Right.
of the flea situation. So.
Right.
And
Yeah.
they were trying to.
Yes. Yeah. And they cry and cry. Yeah. So we provide these things. What you need to provide is time, lots of time, patience, a safe space or area for them, and ability to transport them to a vet or to shelter for vaccinations or tests or whatever. So beginners should probably start with kittens that are 6 weeks or older. They're the easiest ones. They know how to use the litter box. They're eating on their own. And basically what they need is just to be held and exposed to normal living in a house. And you want them around kids. It'd be great if they're around gentle dogs, gentle kids as well. You don't want them around kids that are, springing their necks and stuff, but that sort of thing. But you want them around kids that know how to be around kittens, and you want them around dogs as well, if the dogs are good with cats. And then the other ones are mom cats with kittens that are 3 weeks or older, because mama does all the work. She literally cleans up after them when they pee and poo, and they learn from her how to use the litter box at around 4 to 5 weeks or so. She does all the feeding, so you don't have to mess with feeding them, just her. It's pretty easy. She keeps a clean house, Mom does, when they're like 3 to 6 weeks old or so. It's once they leave is when they get messy, because then they discover litter and how fun it is to play with, and papers and all of those things.
Until you see the kittens.
Yes. Okay, 6 weeks and older, like I said, they mainly need socializing, and oh, there's so much fun to socialize and play with. And it's really important that you pay attention to their personalities, because when you bring them back, we're going to ask you to tell us what their personalities are like, because we're going to have either ask you if you're willing to do it, or one of us will be writing up a description on the personality of the kittens. So really pay attention to what they're like and to what kind of owner or home you think that they would be happiest in. As far as feeding goes, this won't be on all your instructions, so you don't need to memorize this tonight, but it's canned food 4 times a day. You keep dry food out all the time, and of course, fresh water available all the time. Like I said, most kittens are using the litter box by the time they're 6 weeks, and you can encourage them to do this by, once they're done eating, just immediately put them in the litter box, and they catch on really fast. It's amazing. And most importantly, you need to keep that litter box clean, and that means if you're around that litter box, every time a cat poos in it, you should get rid of that. Now, you will be given litter boxes that are disposable. So instead of scooping, you'll just toss the whole litter box.
Really?
Yes, yes, which is much easier in the long run. When they're really tiny, you'll get little flat tray litter boxes that don't have sides on them because they can't crawl up the side and into the litter box, and you just toss that. When they're a little bit older, you get these cardboard ones that you put together, and they've got a special seal or finish on them so that when they pee in them, it doesn't soak through on the other side. And then you just toss them. After they've peed or pooped, I would just toss them because kittens get so messy with that stuff. And so it's really important to be on top of that. If you like for a hospice cat or a behavioral cat that you're fostering, and you've got a normal litter box, which you probably would, it's really important to keep it clean. Diseases can spread so quickly from them stepping in the feces or the poop or whatever, the vomit. So you just need to keep it clean, get that poo out of there as soon as you can, and then that litter box should be cleaned at least once a day. You should you get clumping litter from us. If you don't like it, which I don't, I hate it, because it smells so bad, so I use a different kind myself, but you can just pick up the part that's clumped and get that out of there and pour a little clean on top. And then they'll all jump in and use it all at once because they're so happy that it's clean.
And you avoid having bad litter box habits by
Yes,
keeping it clean. Because
exactly.
they will start looking for other places
They
if their
do.
litter box
They
is dirty.
do, yes. They'll stand right outside it and go there, or they'll maybe just pick another corner in the room and go because they don't want to get near that dirty litter box. Okay. Signs of trouble, and these are the things that you would call us about. They might not be emergencies. In fact, most of the time they aren't, but you should just call and check with us. Runny eyes or nose, any sneezing or coughing. Diarrhea. Diarrhea is a big one with the little ones because they so quickly get dehydrated. It's just unbelievable. And so you can't mess around with diarrhea. The first time you see a kitten with diarrhea, or you see there's diarrhea in the box and you don't know what kitten it was because you didn't see it when it happened, you need to call immediately. Because if it happens more than once, we're likely going to ask you to take the whole litter, if we don't know who it is, to the shelter or to the vet, or we'll get a fecal sample or something. We need to check it out immediately so that they don't get sick. We've had kittens get dehydrated and die just because they had diarrhea, and it's not anything to mess around with. So that's something you really need to pay attention to, as well as not eating. They cannot go very long without not eating. Or what happens, Elaine, when cats don't eat? It happens really fast. Their liver,
When they get hepatic acidosis, yeah, when they get like fatty buildup around the liver, and then that makes them stop eating even more, and then they have force feed them.
and it's not good. Yeah, it can be fatal really fast when kittens or cats don't eat. They're not like dogs, which seem to be able to go a lot longer without eating. You really need to pay attention to cats and kittens if they skip a meal, especially a kitten if it skips a meal. That's something to note. Pale gums, which could mean they're anemic or whatever, but it's another sign of something that's not right. And or consistent crying, obviously. And those are all things to call shelter staff or the foster care coordinator.
Or if they're not pooping too, is another.
Or if they're, yes, if they're not pooping, that's another reason to call. Okay, then when the kittens reach 2 pounds, which is usually around 8 weeks, then you will call the shelter and arrange to bring them in for their FIV and FELV testing. And that's just a simple blood test, right? Yeah, I think, yes, blood. And then they will schedule, the shelter will schedule, based on your schedule and what's convenient for you, a time for you to take the kittens to the vet to get them spayed and neutered. Usually, after they're spayed and neutered, you will be asked to pick them up and take them home for one more night. Now, sometimes that doesn't always happen that way. Sometimes they can be picked up at the vet and taken right back to the shelter from the vet's office. Yes?
I just have a question. When I've had cats before and I've gotten kittens, and I've gotten them from the San Clemente shelter, I waited until 6 months to spay or neuter.
Yeah.
And why are they being spayed or neutered so early? I understand it's because they have to go to the home, but is that hard on their health or anything?
Well, supposedly not, although I don't think it's the most ideal, but no, supposedly it isn't hard on their health. And we do it at that time because we want to get them adopted.
Right.
And the state law says that the shelters cannot adopt out animals without them already being spayed or neutered. So, yeah.
So you have to do it.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Right. But you know, kittens can go into heat at a really early age, 4 months. So
I know,
6 months is too long. 8 weeks might be a little too young, who knows, you know. They all seem to bounce back okay, luckily. So, okay, and another thing that we're putting in new this year that we haven't done in the past is before you bring the kittens back to the shelter to leave them there so that they can become adopted, we're going to ask you to get a fecal sample. Not on every kitten, but just one out of the litter box, and you'll be given the little container to do that in, and to bring it into the shelter so that we can run a fecal sample there just to ensure that we're not bringing kittens into the shelter who've got like Giardia or something that could be spread to other kittens that are there. If it shows up positive, then we'll ask you to keep the kittens until that turns around and it's clear. Yeah, because we're really trying to keep from bringing in those kinds of diseases to the shelter this year. So that's a new thing we've added that we haven't done in the past. Okay, helping your kittens get adopted quickly. Like I said, watch their personalities. If you like to write, we would love to have you write just a short little paragraph that describes each kitten, noting their individual traits, some cute stories about them. If you've got pictures, send those along. Anything that would help us in trying to find the best home for the kitten, and or to help the kitten get attention when at the shelter. Because mid to late summer, we're going to have, 40 kittens in there. And so what's going to make your kitten that you fostered stand out? We need for you to tell us the special things about your kitten or kittens that you have. No. Well, okay. The shelter staff names all of the animals that come in. Sometimes I get the cutest names and sometimes the weirdest, ugliest names. A lot of our fosters name them themselves. But when you call the shelter to schedule an appointment for something, you got to use their shelter name or they will not know who you are talking about. And when you take the kittens to the vet, you got to use their shelter name. But in your home, you can name them anything you want. And a lot of times those names end up sticking too. But yeah, so no, you do not name them technically, but you can call them what you want to. Okay, so, the other thing you can do to help your kittens get adopted quickly. Neighbors and friends, family. Bring them over to your house while you're fostering. Show them all your cute babies. Look at this one, isn't this so cute? And ask them to come over and help you socialize them, which means hold them and cuddle them and play with them and all of that stuff. And our best result is when our kittens don't even have to come back to the shelter because they've already been adopted by foster parents, friends, and neighbors who have found. Now, those people still need to be approved by the shelter to be an adopter, and they still need to fill out the paperwork, but it's just so great that the kitten never even has to show up at the shelter.
Now, for instance, if my dogs and I fall in love with a kitten, it could be adopted.
Almost 99.9% sure. If you've been a good foster parent, yes, yeah. Foster parents get first dibs usually on the kittens that they are, or cats that they are fostering. So
Isn't
that's
that
a
considered
benefit.
foster failure?
That's considered a foster failure. Yes. Okay. Okay, fostering a pregnant mom. This is a fun one. And this is a fun one that people like to do who have young kids because the kids get to experience the birth of the babies. You need a private place for her, a quiet room with maybe a covered box, to go around the side so that she can go in it, and it's open on the front, but the top is covered up. Something, or a little cage or kennel or something that you can put a towel over it so that she feels safe and private with her babies. And the shelter will provide you with the diet and all the supplements that the mama cat, the pregnant mama, needs. And the gestation period is about 66 days, but sometimes we get them when it's like they have those babies the very same night that they're put into foster. Okay, we never know for sure. We can kind of guess. And some of those that go in early, sometimes it ends up being a little longer than what we thought it was. So it's just called, we're pretty good at guessing, but not exact. It's not exact. So it's always kind of fun when the babies start coming and the foster parents call and say, oh, she's got two. Oh, here comes another one. Yeah, very fun. And usually the mom, like I said, she wants a hidden area, and she should not be disturbed during the birth. That means there shouldn't be a whole bunch of people watching or walking in and out or anything. If she goes more than 2 hours between kittens, then you just need to pick her up if she's had kittens by then, with those kittens and take her to the vet so that they can help her along. Usually, I don't think it's happened since I've been the foster coordinator where anybody's had to do that in like the last 3 years, but once in a while it does. But usually mom can deal with it on her own. She might need just a little bit of verbal encouraging from you, but that's about it. She'll clean them up and get them going nursing and that sort of thing. So as soon as she has them, you need to let the shelter know and me know and how many. And we will either arrange for you to take the mom and the kittens to a vet to get them checked out, which is not the most ideal thing because we don't like to disturb them at home. So last summer, and I think we'll do it again this summer, arrange to have a vet tech come out to your house and just evaluate them there, and that seemed to work a lot better. And then he could eyeball them, check them all out, identify if he saw a problem right away, and we could get on it that way, rather than stressing them all out by having to take them on like that. And even at newborn age, it's good to pick them up several times a day, not to jostle them around or anything, but just to pick them up, you know, and hold them up close to you, and be very respectful of mom, because mom might be nervous about that, so you need to really watch her and encourage her and show her she's, you know, you're going to get the baby back and that sort of thing. Hopefully you've had a week or so of developing a relationship with mom by then, but it doesn't always happen that way. Okay, around 3 weeks, you'll get the small litter box and the non-clumpy litter for the kittens, and they'll just copy from mom and learn how to do it. It takes them a while, but mom keeps it cleaned up for you at that point. Yeah. Okay, and then about 3 weeks, you begin introducing them to wet food. Up until then, they've just been getting their nourishment from mom. And then at 4 weeks, you can add the dry. All of this will be in your handouts that you get at the time that you take the foster kittens home. And then, of course, you need to make sure that there's water available. One of the things the kittens do when they're 6 weeks or so old is they tend to spill everything. They're playing so hard and they tip their water over, and so you need to check quite a few times during the day to make sure that they've got a water bowl with water in it, as well as their food. They're messy. They're messy, and so you just need to make sure that those things are in place for them. Then, like I said, when the kitten's around 6 weeks old and they're eating on their own and using the litter box, it's right around then that mom gets spayed, and then she's taken to the shelter, or she's usually taken to the shelter, she dries out, and then she is spayed. And then she's ready to be adopted. And it is so important for you who are willing to do it, or who can, to write up a description on her, because the moms get overlooked in the summertime when we're overwhelmed with kittens. And some of our moms are maybe only a year or less than a year old themselves. I mean, they're basically kittens themselves. And so they act and behave. Once they get away from having to be a mom, you can see the kitten in them. So it's really important that you highlight them and tell, you know, the staff, or write it down what they are like, so that they can get homes too. And then you get to have fun with the kittens after that by yourself in the next couple of weeks. Okay? 6 to 8 weeks, your main job is to socialize them. And this is when we want children, we want your neighbors, we want strangers coming into the house, we want your TV going and your blender and all of those things. One important thing, use toys to play with them. Do not use your fingers. I've been guilty of it, and I've learned the hard way. But you're so tempted, you know, to tickle them in the tummy and let them swat your finger. And when it's little, that's really cute because it doesn't hurt. But when they get bigger, or as adults, all of a sudden it's not so fun anymore, because when they bite, and they think they're just playing, but they're biting, or they scratch. So it's really important to use the toys, and you'll be given toys to use with them, so that they can learn that when they see your hands coming towards them, that means they're going to be petted and loved or picked up when they're not. It's not playtime. It's not time to bite that hand that's coming towards them. When they see toys coming towards them, that's when they can swat and bite and fly all over.
They wouldn't have run of the house at that time, I take it.
Oh, it depends on the situation with the foster. If you have cats of your own, we don't advise you to, and those cats have the run of the house, we don't think it's a good idea for you to let these cats, because these cats have not been vaccinated for everything yet, and they can make your cat sick. And what's the other reason?
Any kind of diseases they might have, not just vaccination, but diseases of any kind.
Oh,
Intestinal issues.
yes, upper respiratory, anything they may have.
Right.
they
They
could
could.
give to your cats, or if your cats have something, they can give to them.
Now, dogs and cats, do they give anything? So
No.
you don't have to worry
Ringworm, maybe,
Ringworm,
yeah,
probably.
but, yeah.
And they're hard to find at that size. I can speak for myself.
They're what?
They're just little and hard to find at that size
Yeah,
when they're in your whole big house. It's
Yeah.
easier.
Yes.
I'm a novice, so I learned that
Yes.
lesson. It was like, oh, they can fit there.
Yeah, exactly.
So
Right,
if I have them contained, I know where to find them.
Exactly.
It made it much easier.
right, yeah.
Keep them contained.
Yes, it's good, you know, you want them to be able to see outside, have a window and plenty of room to play and lots of things to play with and lots of people going in and out. But no, it's not a good idea to have them just have them run in the house. Some of our best fosters are college kids or high school kids in the summertime who aren't in school. Of course, if they're under the age of 21, their parents have to actually be the ones who are officially fostering. But those kids put the fosters in their bedrooms, and they spend a lot of time in their bedrooms. And they got their TV and their phones, and their girlfriends and guys are coming over, you know, and there's a lot of activity. And they come back to the shelter very well socialized with people. So that's a good place to put them too. Okay. Then, I guess I've gone over all of this, haven't I? Socializing, should be fun. Like I said, the shelter will arrange with your schedule a time when you can take them to a vet. And we've got certain vets we work with. And they'll ask you to take them to those particular vets to get them spayed or neutered. And then you call the shelter. Like I said, usually the kittens will come in either the same day or the day after they have been spayed or neutered. However, in addition to the fact that maybe once in a while we would get a fecal sample that shows that they've got something going on, so we would ask you to keep them longer. The other reason might be that we would ask you to keep them longer is that we're full at the shelter. And we got to get some adopted out before we can take any. I mean, we're just full. We have no more room to put them anywhere. So I think that happened only once or twice last summer, but it does happen at times. So anyway, that's an exception to what ordinarily happens or what plans to happen. So then you pat yourself on the back that you've done a very good thing. And then the little kitty says thank you. You say thank you. You probably kept one maybe. And then you clean up your place and get ready for the next one. And the next group. And we're going to have a protocol this year on how to clean up your fostering spot for the next group that comes in so that we're not passing any disease that the litter you had before can pass on to the next litter. So you will be giving a list of instructions that tells you what to do to clean this space up. And it will involve washing all the bedding and toweling in hot water and bleaching out the litter box if you've got a permanent litter box and those sorts of things. So that's a new thing that we've added this year.
I
Yeah.
have a dumb question. If the mom cat's at the shelter and her kittens come in, does she know it? Like, does she?
I never really noticed.
I
that
just
they-
wonder,
they
is that a weird
start-
question? I don't know, I'm a dog.
No,
We'll
it's,
take the kitten up to the
No.
mom and she'll be like,
It's all fine by then, okay.
I
only noticed
remember,
that with one cat one time. And
Just-
she
okay.
was the only one that I ever, and I thought, I think she actually recognized it.
Recognizes it.
I remember one time the mom cat came in and it took her forever to dry up and her kittens came in and she started producing milk
Yes.
again. Her kittens were, it was in our old facility and the kittens were in the same row but way down at the other end. And so, I don't know.
I think they moved her.
Yeah, they
I
did,
remember
yeah.
when that happened.
Yeah.
I was
It's
just
very
curious, I
sad.
don't know. I just.
It's hard, it's sad.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to be sad. I was just-
Yeah, you
Doesn't happen.
brought the whole room down.
Just not trying to guilt you.
You're getting those bottle feeders.
I'm never gonna
Ever again.
Okay, Paula, you want to go over your part, and then we'll answer more questions if you got it.
Let me get mine open up here. Okay.
Oh my gosh.
This is my husband, Bob.
Yay, Bob!
And these are not feral kittens. But we, this last summer, we took these kittens for the last couple weeks because their original foster was going out of town, and so we said, yeah, we'll take them, and so he had them all. He loved it. So this was like he was really comfortable, and he was really having a great time with it. But I want you to think beyond that comfort zone. Once you've fostered some kittens, and I'd like to tell you a little bit about the semi-ferals, just to get a little closer idea of what they're like, and show that the socializing doesn't end right when we take them to the shelter. They very often will regress some when we take them to the shelter, so you're going to need to do some more. If you work at the shelter, volunteer there, then you're going to need to help us continue the process. Semi-feral kittens have had maybe some exposure to humans, usually from somebody feeding them, but they've never really been touched. The mom might be a stray and she might be friendly, but she hasn't brought the kittens up and said, hey, you know, pet my kittens. She doesn't do that. She keeps them away. So when we get the kittens, they might be somewhat familiar with people, but they're not used to being touched. So when we talk about semi-ferals, we think that they're going to be young enough that we're going to be able to socialize them and get them adopted. And it does take a little bit longer, and it's more trying, especially in the beginning. So we also have stray cats that we sometimes catch that have been in a home, but now they've been abandoned, or they've lost their home some way, and so we need to find, I would like to find them foster homes so we can bring them back into a home, get them back to being socialized, and we can take them to the shelter. I've talked to Jen about this, and she's willing to work with us on these cats that are maybe okay, and I don't need to just spay and neuter them and send them back out, which is what we do on the Trap, Neuter, Return program. So if there's room and so forth and so on, we might ask people to foster the older cats. And we just need to remind them that people are not so scary because they forgot. As Marlene was telling you about the fostering process, when they come to the shelter, they evaluate their age and if they need bottle feeding and all that. And then they're also the ones that they evaluate whether they're semi-feral, and how semi-feral are they? Are they just kind of hissy and scared, little flat ears, but they're so little, it's like, really? Are you thinking you're scaring me here? But some of them can be quite aggressive. They'll stomp at you and it makes you jump back 5 feet. So they'll do a little evaluation and let Marlene know that, okay, these guys need socializing. It depends on their age and how many there are. If there's more than one together, then they kind of reinforce their feralness, if that's a noun. So that'll make a difference on how we foster them and what kind of fosters we find for them. If we have large litters, then we might need to break them up, which we really try to do because, again, we find that if we just have one, they come around a whole lot quicker. And so we'll break up the litters, and I know that people will say, oh, but they'll get lonely, but they won't get lonely because they'll have you. They'll fall in love with you. And each day, that, if I go out and I start trapping kittens, I find out there are kittens someplace, and I start trapping them, and I'll catch one day, and then it might be another couple days before I get the other one. That second one is so much more feral than the first one. It just, every day is important for us to try to get them and get them into a foster situation so that we can socialize them. So again, we'll have to separate them. We separate what we call the Spitfires. Those are little bitty ones. So if you're thinking about fostering, this is what you need to think about. Do you have a quiet home? We can't have, whereas it's great for the regular, what I call regular kittens, to have children around, it might be too frightening for a semi-feral kitten. They're just kind of freaking out and they won't ever settle down because it would just be too much activity. So a quiet home would be better, and you might end up having to hold the kitten longer. Although last year, we have moved kittens. I had a couple of kittens for a couple of weeks. They were coming around pretty nicely. Well, then a couple more came into the shelter, so I shuttled my kittens off to somebody else who wasn't quite so experienced, and I took the other kittens. So we do move them around. It's not ideal, but sometimes we have to do that. And if you could take one, if you say, well, I can only take it for 2 weeks, we might ask you to do that, because at least that'll get us a start. And then at the end of 2 weeks, we'll try to find somebody else to take it to continue the process. And sometimes we think maybe it's even better because now the kitten is getting used to more than one person, because they will bond to the first person they see, especially because you're feeding them. It's all about food. So this is a couple of kittens. It was actually 5 that I caught at McDonald's, and they were about 8 weeks old when I caught them. They were very, very hard to handle when I brought them in. I used a lot of 4-letter words. They're like, so they were really, really difficult at the beginning. So we want to take them from this. This is 2 of them, and this was 3 to 4 weeks later, and they're sitting in my lap. So yeah. It's really quite rewarding to have that happen. Now, I don't know if they crawled in my lap or if I picked them up, but this is Big Ben. Sorry, Big Ben. And he was saying, please don't go to work clothes. I don't know if you can see his little tongue sticking up. He was very cute. So this is 2 months after I caught him. So this is how far we came with these guys, and yet I was not able to hold them when they came in. I was scruffing them and shoving them into my armpit so that I could move them around, and it was pretty scary at first. And they did come around pretty well. When you foster these types of kittens, you might not even touch them for the first 24 hours. In fact, it was recommended by Mila. Mila is a great foster person from the Irvine shelter. She said, really, just let them sit in a cage for a couple days and not even try to touch them. When I first started doing this, I was wanting to get in there and touch them and hold them and start working with them right away. And she said, just take it easy, let them settle down, and eventually you start touching them. I don't want to scare you, but yeah, gloves are a good idea. The back scratcher. We use baby food. They love it, and you start with it on a spoon and then on your finger, and they just love you after they get a taste of it. You need to be careful if you do use the baby food that you make sure it doesn't have any onion or garlic in it. The Gerber and the beechnut, the real early stages, is the one you'll want to use. You can have a small amount of dry kibble out, but really when it comes to really starting to socialize these kittens, it's all about the food, and you're going to want them to be hungry because you're going to want them to come to you for the food. So the canned food is, what they'll really love. If you're going to be away from them, you can have a radio or a TV on and just have voices on all the time, so they kind of get used to people sounds, because some of these guys have never really heard people sounds before. So you want to, it's also suggested that if you're sitting with them, that you could just sit there and read to them, get the newspaper out, and they're not going to become, Republicans or Democrats. This is something else that we use, it's Rescue Remedy. I actually get the one for pets because it's a little oilier. And just put a couple drops in the palm of your hand and then you put it on their ear, like inside their ears. You can put it in their food or in their water. And it's kind of a holistic approach to calming the cats. You can find it in health food stores and farm to market over in San Juan. Carries it also. Fellaway, I wasn't sure about Fellaway, but again, Mila said that she's read some studies where they've tested Fellaway as a pheromone that comes from the cheeks of the cats when they rub on things like a secretion. So there's a factory in Santa Ana where there's a bunch of cats going rubbing all the time, and then gather it all up and they put it in these bottles. Not really. I always wonder how are they doing it. Somehow they've been able to manufacture this stuff so it replicates the pheromones on cats' cheeks. And so it's a calming. There's a plug-in and there's also a spray. So I have started using this. Whether it works or not, I don't know. There's a
I've
cat
had some
in the
people
shelter.
swear by it. Doesn't have
Yeah.
work for mine, but I've had other people swear by it.
And yet I used it at the shelter on Hugo, and there was this incredible, transformation. I was
What does work?
Yeah.
On the spray, are you putting it on you?
No, you just spray the room, spray just like a couple sprigs in a small room, or you just have it plugged in near them. So either one.
Although when we were suggesting that our volunteers get used to the idea of spritzing a little on one of their personal blankets and sticking that in the box when they go home, so that they're.
Yeah.
And I have sprayed it on my clothing,
Yeah.
so that when I'm holding
It's
them.
just expensive.
Okay, so how do we do this? We have cages, and some people say, oh, I hate to put them in a cage, but you really need to contain them. You need to be able to get to them. And even though you think that might be cool, they're actually going to be a little bit more comfortable because they are in a spot where they can kind of get in a corner and just huddle and be their little afraid selves. So cages are really the way to go. They're not going to like you. Just trust me on that. They don't like people.
So we provide the cages.
We do
Okay.
provide
Yes.
cages. We have cages. We're going to do an inventory and make sure we have plenty of them. It's done with food. It's done with a lot of patients. These are a couple of the cages that I have at my house. This is the kind of condo style, and this is when I put on my desk, and I can actually kind of get my shoulders inside that one, head up back there. That's too many cats. There's 4 or 5 or something. That was way too many. We won't make you take that many. You could also cover that whole thing, which I've done. I put a whole sheet over it so they feel a little bit more contained. And this way you're not going to be chasing them, because when you chase them, you're just not going to be able to do anything. Also enables you to do some hand feeding. And you can take like a t-shirt that you've worn or something and put it in the cage with them so they kind of get used to people's smells. And cleaning up is going to be a lot easier that way. And you can also, typically these guys have wheels, and so you can move it from room to room if you need to move it around. And then please return the cage when you're done. Don't like to use those. Okay, so this is, this kitty really didn't want to have anything to do with me. Yeah. He doesn't like me. Okay, so then when you put the food down, so let's go.
Yeah.
There's a sit there. So what I do is I start off, I take the wet food into the cage, and I put it there, and I just sit there and wait until I don't get to sit right next to them. In fact, I usually sit away, and they'll eventually come over and start eating. If they don't, I take the food away. They're not getting any food unless they eat it in front of me. So I keep doing this until they're so hungry. Now, I'm not saying we're going 48 hours, but until they're so hungry that they're going to want to come and eat in front of me. And then I start moving closer with the food, and then I start with a spoon, trying to get them to eat off the spoon, and usually with the baby food, it works really well. They'll eventually start eating it. So these are a couple of guys. I'm hoping you can actually do this. So I'm just sitting next to the cage.
Oh, Listen to her,
Yeah, that's poker. So they were beginning to eat in front of me, and I thought, okay, this is good. And I was sitting right next to the cage. And these guys are like, "Oh, maybe there's something here. Maybe I can do it." So it's going to move just a little closer. We're making some progress here. So, one of the back, even grooming in front of me was a big deal. When they start grooming, when they start doing normal cat stuff, think, wow, we're making some progress. So then, I'm sitting here with the cage open, there's my legs. And so she's come up to get the food, and we've made a lot of progress on this one. She turned out to be a really great guy. I think it's a Sandy. I don't know if you remember Sandy from the shelter. So, I do put dry food in there, but I don't put a lot. I just give them enough to get some nutrition. But 3 times a day, I go in there and I feed them. So that's what I'm saying. It takes a lot of time and a lot of patience, because this is what it's all about. It's all about food. So she turned out to be a nice kitty. And even if you can't, if you're just working in your office or something, spending time with them is always a good idea. It's pretty entertaining, actually. So I moved the cage into my office, and I'm sitting there watching them. This one. So you want to kind of saturate them with your presence, so they're like really used to having people around. He was okay, by the way. He was fine. Okay, then it gets to the point where you're able to take them out and hold them. And one of the things, again, I learned from Mila last year, is I used to get them and just rip them and hold them. And she said, no, just hold them lightly so that they can kind of squirm around with you a little bit, but not get away. And I found this last year that really did help, that they were a little bit more relaxed with me. And this one I was able to put in a towel because he was a little bit older. I've got a kitten pouch that Julie here made for me, and we need more. If anybody is good with a sewing machine, this is what it looks like. I've got fabric, I just need somebody to sew. So, get the whole family involved, holding. Nathan Winograd came to our shelter quite a few years ago and gave us a presentation similar to this, and he said, you're sitting there watching TV, everybody holds a kitten. Everybody holds a kitten. You go to the bathroom, you take the kitten with you. Just hold it. And that's really all about the holding and the food. And I don't really have anything to say about this. It's just okay, then once they're coming to the front of the cage when you walk in because they need food, then you know you're ready to move them out of the cage and into a room. But what I do is I don't just put them in a room and say, okay, you've got this freedom. I take them with me into a small bathroom, and I sit there with them and I pet them. I have food, make sure they come to me, and I pick them up often. And only for like 10 minutes the first time, take them back to the cage. Do that a few times a day, and then just increase the time until they're comfortable. And actually, when you take them into the room, they're going to freak out. They're going to be like, they'll run away, and you'll think, what happened to that sweet little kitten who just came to me in the other room in the cage? They revert, and so you just need to work on it again and start the process over again, and pretty soon they'll start coming to you again, and then after a while you'll really just stay in the room. So when is it time to take them to the shelter? Ideally, it's when you walk in the room and they come up and say hi. That doesn't always happen with the semi-feral. socialize. They're still a little bit nervous. These cats will maybe always be a little bit nervous. But you want them to be coming to you for petting, for attention, and that's when you're going to take them to shelter. You might get to a point where they've plateaued, think they're not advancing anymore. And I will usually take them to the shelter at that point and say, okay, volunteers, it's your turn. We need more people, and it's amazing how sometimes they will continue to socialize at that point. If you have friends, you can have come over and see them and spend time with them. That would be great. We started a little bit of a buddy system last year where people who wanted to work with the semi-ferals but could not actually foster them, like Kathleen, she came over and she spent some time with some of the semi-ferals. So if you want to have a buddy system, we could work on that with you and try to continue the socializing. Okay, I don't expect you to do this, but I did this. I do want you to write notes and let the volunteers know what works with this kitten, what this kitten likes, what this kitten doesn't like, if it likes treats, if it's food motivated, that's very helpful. I was fostering Canby, and Canby, when I first got him, he was older, I almost sent him back, I almost got him neutered and said, you're going back to the water district for your life. But he finally did come around. He hated being carried, and so I really had to work with him on that. So when I was taking him to the shelter, I made a little training video and I sent this out to the volunteers. And he's now been adopted by one of the volunteers. His name is Tony now, and he's doing great. She says he's just a great cat. She can pick him up, carry him. And I heard from the volunteers that this is really helpful for them to see what they could do besides just going up to a kitten and petting it, to actually continue working with the cat. And a week ago, before this was taken, I could not have done this. He would not have allowed me to do it.
So you're giving him food, and then you pick him up under his tummy?
And then he eats it, and then he's like, okay, it's cool.
So the reward goes first.
Yeah.
The reward is to bring him to you, and he's eating it while you're doing the bad thing, what he thinks is the bad thing. Then we also started doing some clicker training. Clicker training is really, really tricky. You really need to be fast, and there are a lot of things on the internet about clicker training and techniques on doing it, but you need to be treat, click, trick, click. So this is the Constellation group from a couple of years ago, and we were training them at the shelter. So he was actually coming to the actual wand to touch it, because he knew if he touched that, he was going to get a treat. So it worked out really well. Some of them it doesn't work with. Ralphie, it did not work with. Ralphie was too anxious to get the treat and was all over my face. Like, I don't care about your little stupid giver. Give me the treat.
And so my treat motivated, so it doesn't work.
Was that
Right.
right? We did care less about the treat.
Yeah, 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 he was so shy. It's really helpful if you keep a journal. There are a couple reasons. Not only will it just make you remember what you did from time to time, but it will encourage you, because you'll look back and say, oh my gosh, 3 days ago I couldn't do this, if you go back and read your journal. It also helps you for the next time. You could go back, and I've been doing this, and I can go back and say, oh yeah, I tried that with that kitten, it worked really well. So, you know, it's a good idea. You're not going to share this with anybody. This is just for your own purposes. So it's really helpful to have that. That was Sandy and Kathy. That was the little one that had the video. I had to separate them. I got this email last week.
Did you cry?
a handout, I've got these websites that you could go to. It's got a lot more information about fostering semi-feral kittens. The Urban Cat League one is really, really good. It's got some very long video in there, so I would suggest you go there and look at that. Last year, as an extension of the Cat Care Improvement Project, I put on a workshop much more involved than this little part that I'm doing here. And I did videotape that, and it's on YouTube. So if you want to watch that, just let me know. My email address is there, and I'll give you access to that, so you could go on and watch it. It was more of a workshop, it wasn't just me talking, it was a lot of other people who had experience with working with semi-ferals, and so I got a lot out of it. And if you want a healthy trap, this is Scamper. If those of you remember Scamper, he lives in the shelter. He was dumped in the harbor, and it took us about 3 or 4 months to catch him because he would not come to us, he would not go near a trap. But I finally did get him with a drop trap, and he was obviously not a feral cat. This is in the cage. This is about 2 days later.
Is there many feral cats still out in the harbor? I know there used to be 3. They're not. Are people feeding? Well, you're feeding them.
Yeah.
I've just noticed that I haven't seen any in a long while.
Yeah, there's not there.
And we have a colony of 5 of them, San Clemente, that are fed too.
Really? Yeah. So if you want to help feed feral cats, let us know. We want you to be successful because when you're successful, that means we're going to get those kids adopted. They're going to get them adopted quickly. We don't want them to be there for a really long time. We don't want scared cats in our shelter. So we're here to help. We've got a lot of resources with the foster coordinator, with me, with the internet. So please, if you want to help us, then please let us know. Our phone numbers and email addresses and everything are out there for you. All right, thank you. Any questions?
Any questions?
Jude, my old lady, still trying to pick her up. Spring, I've used that on the years. To pick her up, maybe spraying it on my clothes.
Bellaway? Yeah, sure.
I'm just trying to.
Yeah. It smells kind of musty. It's just kind of a musty smell. It's not
It's not perfumey or unpleasant or anything.
It's not really unpleasant.
I used that on my dog that I rescued when I was training.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Bellaway. Yeah. So, yeah, you might try that if that's. Is she treat motivated at all? I mean,
No.
No, that doesn't do it.
She's got a mind of her own. She will come to me when she wants petting, and then she will lead me to 2 places in the house that she will lay down and
Well,
love to be brushed and heard and
oh, that's interesting.
at any other place.
Yeah,
She just freaks out.
Huh.
that's interesting. Yeah.
She's that definition of feral. Do you think she was partially feral or?
I don't think so. I think she just probably has got some fear issues.
A lot of anxiety.
Yeah.
I mean, after a year and a half,
Yeah, and she just, it's just like her personality. Yeah, where she's gonna be. And one of the feral cats that, or kittens that we fostered, Punch, I think he was about 3 months old when we got him, and his brother came around pretty well. We took him to the shelter, and we kept Punch for a while longer, hoping we would turn him around, and 3 years later, he was finally coming to us. 4 years, he's sitting on my husband's lap.
Well, she'll come to me, but that's part of it.
Oh, the expert.
I have my own personal domestic cat. He's a very friendly cat, but he won't sit on a lap. He'll
Yeah.
lay next to you, but you reach out to touch him, he takes off.
Yeah.
So, yeah. I mean, I think it's personalities sometimes.
Yeah, it's just the way they are.
Yeah.
And which is maybe why she was at the shelter to begin with, because whoever had her just thought, I'm not putting up with this kind of cat. Yeah.
I
And also scratching. I've gotten every type of scratching post, and she's taking care of 2 chairs, and she's on her 3rd, and I yelled at her, and she disappeared for 3 days.
Yeah.
I can't yell at her.
And you
No,
tried,
really.
so you tried putting like packing tape on those things, or
Yeah, I
sticky
got
paws,
everything taped
scratch
up
tape.
now.
Oil.
tin foil, bitter apple stuff you could buy at the pet stores that you spray on.
Yeah, I've tried those.
Just start, put it upside down and stuff with little webs on.
Yeah, the things that you put in your cars.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
Car mats?
Yeah, car mats.
Yeah, or is it the carpet? Right. The stuff you put on your
Oh,
carpet
okay,
sometimes
yeah.
too, that hits, I've used that for one of mine.
Yeah.
One thing I forgot to mention is that the shelter changed the foster care application, and they've asked everybody, even if you've already filled one out, to fill out a new one. So I've got the new ones here, if any of you are planning on fostering or would like to be a one-night resource. If you would fill one out, I would appreciate it.